Testing audio. If you are planning on making a comment tonight regarding any of the items on the agenda, please make sure to come sign the sign-in sheet. If you haven't already, just come put your name on here so we can keep track of who says what.
It would be so confused if you can hear the thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Phil Dixon, the Chairman of the Board of Architectural Review, and we welcome you to our Board of Architectural Review Board meeting. It's now 6 o'clock on October 1st, and it's the time to schedule our meeting to begin. Depending on the size or complexity of a project, each applicant has the opportunity to present a conceptual or a master plan for our review prior to committing funds for a full set of design plans and specs. Approval of a concept means that we might agree with the concept while disagreeing with some of the details. It also means that each phase of the project must be submitted at a later date once plans are more fully developed to obtain the board's final approval for that individual portion of the project. Hopefully, any disagreements will have been worked out before the applicant comes back before the board. One of the projects being reviewed this evening has been submitted before and is now ready to be considered for further approval. For those of you who may be new to our meeting, our charge is to look at each project purely on aesthetics, design, architecture, height, mass, and scale, and in harmony with the historic district of the town of Somerville. We look at the overall street scene. Although we're not required to solicit comments from anyone other than the applicant and board members, except for the demolition requests, we usually choose to begin our project review with a public hearing to allow others to express comments that might help influence our decision-making before the applicant has presented the project and the board members have resolved any questions that they might have. You were asked to sign up when you first arrived and indicate which project you wish to comment. When called on, please limit your comments to not more than 3 minutes. As always, we will review each submittal in the order that it was submitted. However, as a first order of business, we must approve the minutes of our last meeting, which were sent to board members for review prior to the meeting. Are there any changes that are needed, or do we have a motion to accept them?
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Please respond by answering with a yes or no. Beth,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Nancy Jean,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
and mine is yes. We will now call on those who signed up when they arrived to comment on a project being presented.
First, we've got Walker Smith regarding 500 North Main Street.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the council. I don't like, with all of my heart, soul, and mind the plan for 500 North Main Street. It is the ugliest thing I have ever seen in my life. It looks like it belongs on Highway 17A in Mount Plastic. It's disgusting. This building that they want to replace with this God-smackingly ugly edifice is the very entrance to downtown Somerville, the historic district. We've torn down too many pretty buildings for a long time. Leave it. Don't touch it. But if you are going to do something about it, how about this? Refurbish, restore, and repurpose. If you have to tear down something, how about build something that looks like something already there? How about put the new building up so that it looks like something that's already there? That would be taking cues from the old and making them new again. We don't have to tear down and put up something that is obviously out of place. It, as the chairman said, it doesn't go well with the historic look of Somerville. It doesn't. And this pretense of preserving the edifice or the front part or whatever they want to call it is a very sorry sort of, oh, we're going to throw you a bone. No, absolutely not. Somerville doesn't want it. Mind you, there are not enough people here to speak. If enough people knew about it, you'd have 300 people behind me to say, don't do it.
Mr. Smith, your time is concluded.
Right. I want more time. Tell the county council one thing. Do better. Send it back to them and say, you got to do better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate your time. Now, I'll yield to the next person.
Next, we've got Peter Gorman speaking regarding 500 North Main Street.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members. I wish to speak to the 500 North Main item on your agenda tonight for conceptual approval of the old hospital development. This could be one of the most significant and consequential decisions that you make for the next several years. While the current building is not particularly artistically significant, it is culturally and socially significant. Generations of Somervillians have been born there and died there. Your statutory and codified responsibilities require you to address this cultural significance as you decide the ultimate fate of this site. Over the past 2 years, the alternative development proposals for the site have been controversial. I'm not going to repeat them here, but I will cite some concerns of mine on the new conceptual proposals. This is just phase 1 of the proposed development of the site, presenting a 3-story commercial building. The plans also identify future potential development sites that will cover the entire 5-acre lot. And those sites are up to 4 times the current development of the footprint of the proposed building, the commercial building. So it looks like they're going to cover the entire 5 acres. Citizens need to know the full extent of the proposed development built out before you approve phase one. In other words, the master plan that you referred to earlier. Part of the proposal involves moving the Veterans Memorial Hospital, the Memorial Monument to the corner of Highway 78 and North Main, the busiest corner in Somerville. The idea that this will be a peaceful park is absurd with all of that noisy traffic that is going to be nearby. The size, design, and scale of the building have nothing to do with the surrounding environments. Your charge is to require the design to accommodate and reflect this surrounding vernacular. The county obviously wants to develop a property that they acquired at almost no cost and turn it into a tax generator that sacrifices design and community contribution for profit. This is contradictory to your oath of office to approve only designs that reflect the social and cultural values of the historic district. This is not the first time the county has attempted to demolish the old hospital. I have copies of a letter signed by all members of the town council in 1990 requesting that it reconsider efforts to demolish that hospital, and I have copies if you'd like. I will conclude by urging you to follow the BAR architectural guidelines that strongly discourage demolition by neglect, which is the case here. The county is on public record as complaining that they do
Mr.
not
Gorman,
wish
your
to
3
continue-
minutes is concluded.
I will conclude. You have a case of demolition by neglect here, and I urge you not to approve this.
Next is Rudd Smith, and the address is not specified on the sign-in sheet. 500 North Main.
Good evening. I live at 205 South Hickory, which is in the historic district. First thing, I don't know if it gives me any special standing. I wasn't born in that hospital, but I did have my chin sewed up after a football game 60-something years ago. I just wanted to ask you, and I think you'll do this anyway. I'm maybe saying something that doesn't need to be said, but please be very attentive to the details of what's submitted. I've seen the verbiage about what this product is. One as recently as this afternoon in a periodic release that the county sends out. Sounds great. But the things that I've heard, and none of it is firsthand, I haven't seen the plans, doesn't seem to me to match up with those words. So my request to you is just please be attentive to those details and make sure that what it's said to do is what it does. I do think that's a wonderful piece of architecture we've got there. Doesn't matter that there are dozens of them all over the country built to one set of plans. That one's ours. And I did get my chin sewed up, so thank you.
Next is Tiffany Heber, speaking regarding 500 North Main Street.
Good evening. Intentional, respectful, thoughtful redevelopment. Mr. Chairman, you, in your opening statement about the charge, that right there explains what y'all are here to do. In all honesty, do you believe the conceptual documents that were presented to y'all meets that goal? I, for one, do not. I feel it's a slap in the face to Somerville, Dorchester County, and the historic district. Have confidence in y'all. I'm going off script here. I've sat and watched YouTube videos of y'all's past meetings for the last couple of years. The detail that y'all look at, the number of panes in a window, how the eaves are and everything. So I have every confidence in y'all that y'all are going to make the right decision, and I pray that y'all take that to heart. Please don't allow for the butchering of the Somerville landmark. And just remember, intentional, respectful, thoughtful redevelopment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the sign-in sheet are Mr. Lee and Mr. Gilbert, but I believe you two will be speaking later on in the meeting when your application is being reviewed. So for the public hearing comments, we'll move on to Bill McIntosh regarding 500 North Main Street.
Good evening. Pleasure to be here with you tonight. I just wanted to start off by thanking you for your service to our town. It's not easy sitting up on that dais fielding brickbats while trying to exercise your independent judgment, but also respect the wishes of your constituents, our citizens and taxpayers. When I did it for 12 years, at least they gave us a little bit of money for it, but apparently you guys are out of luck in that regard. This is my first in-person meeting in more than 12 years with the BAR. When I served on council, I felt it completely inappropriate to attend meetings and not in keeping with the code of ethics that I signed and each of you signed, that is designed to keep you free from political influence and to exercise that independent judgment. I have been watching your meetings for most of the last 12 years online, and I really have come to enjoy those meetings and respect the work that you've done. I think about the Bon Air Park in particular, where there's just no question in my mind that that is a better project, much better project because of your work. As for conceptual review of phase one, my position is very simple. It's not ready. It's not ripe. Send it back without any discussion, without any debate. Here's why. It puts the cart before the horse. The whole game here is demolition. Demolishing both of the historic original flanks of the historic 1937 building. And this phase one, putting a county office building up on, essentially on the corner of 78 and North Main, would require but I would call the right flank facing the building. I don't know if that's architecturally correct or not, but it would require demolition of that flank for a parking lot for bureaucrats to park in. I don't think when it comes down time for that demolition permit to be heard, that it's going to stand the test that you guys will employ. The problem is, if you dive in now, talking about materials and all the things you do and grant conceptual approval, it's just like Chairman Dixon said at the beginning. The developers then go to work, spending money hand over fist. And when it comes time to take up that demolition permit, if you start asking questions, if you pause, if you hesitate, you're going to hear from developers and probably their lawyers saying, wait a minute, we relied to our detriment. We've spent so much money since you guys granted conceptual approval that if you don't give us that demolition permit, bad things are going to happen. Give it back to them.
Mr. McIntosh, your time is concluded.
Thanks.
Next is Arlene Wheeler regarding 500 North Main Street.
Thank you for allowing me to speak this afternoon. The first thing I want to bring up is, as not anybody from the National Historical Society weighed in on this, this is one of the few buildings left in the country that was built under the New Deal. And I don't understand why nobody has brought that up. The other thing I want to mention is my office is on Main Street next to Simmons Barbershop, 141A North Main Street. We have such a serious problem with the homeless people that our doors have to stay locked during the day. And I hope that this doesn't bring even more in. If nothing else, maybe y'all could consider opening up a bathhouse outside for them, because they use our area for using the bathroom, storage, you name it. And like I said, we have to lock it up every day while we're there. And that's a shame. From 8 to 5 in the evenings, you definitely don't go in there without locking the door. And I'm just afraid it's going to bring more of this back in when this starts. Thank you for letting me speak.
Next is Tommy Fagan regarding 500 North Main Street.
Thank you all for letting me speak. Yes, sir. First, the emotional, the people that were born there, people we know that were born there, the people that died in that hospital. You know, that pulls your heart out. You know, that's our place. That's our hospital. Was hoping that the county would hang on to it forever, but evidently they've got bigger and better plans. Now, looking at the aesthetics with the historic district, like I spoke at the county council, all we have in Somerville, we don't have a river walk. We don't have beaches. We don't have a big bridge going across. We got pine trees and azalea bushes. You go in there and cut the pine trees down, tear up the azalea bushes. That's the bookends of Somerville. Starts at the old hospital and ends right here. That's destroying the historic district of Somerville. Everything in between, that's proper Somerville. Not to mention, Doc Meservey saw me. I was in a couple of state championship marching bands, and one of my buddies reached over and slapped me on the knee with one of his drumsticks and thought it broke my kneecap. He x-rayed me and sent me back to school. So, Somerville is our home. We need to protect it. We need to protect it from all kinds of things. Now, in the county renderings, it said that there was going to be subsidized housing. Now, where's that subsidy coming from? The town of Somerville going to subsidize that? Dorchester County going to subsidize that? Or are you going to take a bite out of that federal apple? And then they're going to send illegal immigrants in here to shoot us up like in Aurora, Colorado. Let's think about things. And I know this is the first block in the Main Street project. Wanting to cut it down, make it 2 lanes, have nice bike lanes and big wide sidewalks all through town, and then it'd be tied up. Then these people that panhandle at Walmart can push their stolen shopping carts right through town, hit the trail that they're putting down by the Berlin G, and go to the Walmart out on Dorchester that's in North Charleston. Be careful what you do. These utopian societies like Portland, Seattle, San Francisco, where you do so much to make things so pretty, build it, they will come. Build them a way to come and go. I know y'all passed laws about defecation and urination here last year, but as they're passing through town, they're all going to run into azalea bushes out there.
Mr. Fagan, your time is concluded.
Thank you so much. Thank y'all for allowing me to speak.
So that is everybody that signed up to speak today. I also received some comments by email that I forwarded to the board earlier, but I will read them aloud as well here for the record. This was the only one that I received. Good afternoon. I would like to thank each of the board members for your service, particularly on projects like 500 North Main Street, which can carry a tremendous burden. It is not an easy task, and I appreciate your dedication to protecting the town's historic resources. I realize that the item on tonight's agenda is just conceptual, so I will keep my comments brief. I would like to urge the town to use caution and not encourage the county to continue spending time and resources on the design and review of the new building in the absence of a submittal/decision regarding the existing historic building on site. The current concept plan relies on the demolition of one of the town's unique historic resources, and the partial preservation noted on the plans is an abhorrent farce of preservation. The intent with bringing a conceptual plan forward prior to requesting demolition is to engender positive feelings towards a potential design and site plan. However, once approvals are given and permission to demolish the historic structure is obtained, there is nothing in place to require the approved plans be constructed. The historic building could be torn down to facilitate a development that never comes. This is why designs that are contingent upon obtaining approval for demolition of existing buildings should be treated with a grain of salt, and the existing building should be reviewed according to its own merit, not the merit of the project replacing it. I would ask that you not facilitate continued expenditure of time and money, and instead provide feedback that centers around the need to address the existing historic building first. It would be inappropriate to discuss future site designs without a clear understanding of the existing site constraints. Comments on the site cannot and should not be provided if the historic building cannot be removed, and the project representatives should be clearly told as much. Thank you for all that you do. Sincerely, a town resident and county employee. And that is all of our public comment.
Were there any comments on any other projects?
That was everything.
The first project that we have tonight is 306 West Richardson Avenue.
Applicant is requesting conceptual review for changes made to the plan and architecture versus how they were previously approved back in February. The proposed site plan alterations are necessitated by tree protection board requirements and the installation of a drainage easement on site. Per discussion at the tree protection board meeting, the wall that is currently shown around the courtyard area would be replaced with a fence. Drawings would need to be updated to show this before permitting. Per tree protection board, an arborist care plan will be required for the trees on site. The new proposed location will require further encroachment into the 15-foot side buffer than was previously approved, although it was already approved with some encroachment. The encroachment into the drainage easement as shown on the site plan has been approved by the town's engineering department.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members, staff. Pleasure to be here again this evening. It's been a while since I've stood before you, and we have had a lot of meetings over the last 10 months moving forward with the drainage layout and the architecture design and the tree removal plan. So we're certainly not asking for anything final tonight, but we do have a couple little minor things that we need some input from you on before we can move forward with a plan and then get to the next meeting with everyone. So while each of these independent, the drainage architecture design and tree removal, they're all independent of the other, but obviously all interconnected and influence each other and the design decisions. Because this site is unique and has more than the usual number of issues and site conditions that affect the site layout and the design of the proposed home, I want to briefly mention these issues to remind you of the challenges that we have faced on the lot. Some of the site issues and conditions are the site slopes 7 feet down from the high corner of the front of the lot to the rear west corner. The amount of grade change is challenging both in the architecture design and in the drainage design. We engaged Joseph Gesner, a registered landscape architect, to work with us on the site, to site the home and on the property, and considered how best to drain the water from the uphill properties and this property. It took many meetings, discussions, and revisions, but we worked with the town to develop a robust drainage plan, and there is now a 10-foot wide drainage easement that we've accepted on our property on the right side of the property, capturing the runoff from our site as well as the property above the site. The site has been vacant for many years, and while there are many homes on lots in the historic district with numerous large trees, in general, these trees have grown around the homes. So many of the homes are under the tree canopy. When we overlaid the tree canopy on this site, it extended almost 100% of the site. So we engaged Forrest Evans, who's an arborist with Natural Directions, to review all the trees on the site and write a report. And we received that report last October. But even when we applied the arborist recommendations for which trees were dead or in poor condition, the reduced tree canopy still covered most of the site. We've worked extensively with the town arborist to develop a plan that could be approved by the tree commission, and we've received that approval in September at their last meeting. So that was a big step for us going forward. But in order to get their approval, we had to revise the design layout of the site and the home. That included moving the location of the home on the site to provide clearance of the clearances that they requested for several of the major trees on the site. So we are now coming back to you with these changes for you to review as we work toward finalizing our design. So specifically in relationship to the trees, we're asking for your approval So a slightly reduced setback of our portico share from 8 foot 8 inches to 7 foot 9 inches to accommodate the setbacks that are needed for the trees on the left uphill side of the lot. The footprint of the home is narrower but longer to provide space for the setbacks needed for the trees on the left uphill side of the lot. The home is pushed closer to the street to accommodate the oak and magnolia trees in the rear and the longer footprint shape of the home. The other architectural change we're asking for you to approve are revised elevations to reflect the longer but narrower footprint shape. On the side elevations, the rear section is now expressed as a block, similar to the front block, but lower. The portico share is pushed back on the site to fit into the recess behind the front block. So with that, we would really appreciate your help so that we can move to the next step and get to a final design and come back before you again. But we need a little bit more room on that right side because of the trees on the left that pushed us over.
I'm curious how the drainage that you changed worked with this storm that just came through. Did it work?
I'm not aware of any standing water on that lot or anything. You know, the proof will really come in when we put a structure there because we'll have water coming from those uphill properties. We have 2 of them that'll come to us, and then moving the water over, we'll channel it over to the drainage easement. That will also dogleg over 310 West Richardson, which will end up going into the canal.
Okay.
So we still will be putting, you know, the appropriate pipes and potentially French drain, grates, whatever we need, inlets along that area to accommodate the water.
Thank you.
So we're prepared for that. Thank you.
Randy, would you mind flipping through the elevations for us one more time? And I'm assuming we don't have a copy of what we approved last time.
What you approved last time was a request for us to go over into the setback again slightly because of the trees, but we didn't realize how much we would need to get over there. The only structure that's going into that setback is the 2 right-hand posts of the portico share. It's not it's not a 4-sided building. It's a kind of just the legs of that structure coming down.
Good. So my only concern, why I was asking is, I mean, to me, it's a nice looking project, except for go back to the one elevation that shows, not that one, the next one, maybe one more and one more. Maybe.
That's the back.
This one.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
So the little, I'll call it a dog shed for the fireplace.
Oh, well, and you know, that's
But
not
it's-
done. It's not a dog shed. We will be adding a gas fireplace there.
Right.
So that was the rendering of the vent that will have to come out,
Right.
but it doesn't have to look like that.
Well, that's the one thing that stands out to me, is to me, those are always awkward. You can see it from the road. And I would say that would either need to be, that would have to be readdressed. And I don't know exactly what that is, whether that's a chimney that goes all the way up, a fake chimney or something, but that's my one objection.
We did have a chimney there, but we decided that we were going to opt out of a wood burning fireplace and opt into just a gas fireplace.
Sure.
I mean, we're getting older, so we're not gonna haul wood in, I mean, realistically. So we've reduced that, but I don't know why it couldn't look different.
Okay.
Tim, I'm not familiar with the term dog shed. Help me out with this.
Well, basically, think of this. I mean, they have a fireplace on the inside of the
Yeah,
house, right?
right.
It's a gas fireplace.
Mhm.
And so on the outside of the house, instead of the look of a chimney that goes all the way up,
Hmm.
they've basically built a simple shed, a lean-to shed that's attached to it.
I see.
And
Mhm.
so it's just a shed that's attached to the side of the building. And they always just look.
Looks naked.
Where it is, yeah, it's just, in a historic district, we see this a lot of places. But in a historic district, I just think the bar is higher than that
Mhm.
for Somerville.
Can it be a fake chimney?
It could be a fake chimney that goes all the way up, or it could be, architecturally addressed in a better manner than that. So, my proposal, I'll obviously need to, but what, my proposal would be that approval of everything, but they need to come back and address that chimney.
Mhm.
And,
It looks naked. It's a fun, I
No,
mean,
There's no landscaping there. but
Yeah,
We're gonna
mhm.
make that look cute. We'll
Yeah.
cute that up.
And it's not the landscaping, it's just the awkwardness of a box attached to the side of the house that serves no purpose. And so if it's needs to look like a fireplace, it needs to look like a fireplace, or otherwise the fireplace could be inside your house and you lose square footage, but the wall could be flush on the outside and the fireplace is inside and you build bookcases or something on either side. So there's different ways to handle it. So that's just.
Yeah.
We've had this same issue come up before with other homes being built that have gas fireplaces. That in keeping with the Somerville Historic District, it needs to look like it has a chimney. So, yes, I believe that needs to be addressed as well.
And you can address it, I'm sorry, just to jump in, you can address it, I mean, it can still be a chimney that is sided. It goes all the way up with a cap on the top, even though the cap may serve no purpose, you know, it doesn't have to be a brick masonry chimney. That's what I was trying to do.
Well, one thing about it, if you had the fireplace in, if you ever, whatever reason, you need to burn a wood fire, if you had the chimney, you could do it. Whereas
True.
right now you couldn't.
Yep,
And-
good point. Yep. We'll make that note.
Wanted to ask you the fencing
Yes.
going around on the side. I guess it's off the side of the image that we're seeing now. Is that going to remain the same?
We had a retaining wall. We thought we were gonna need a retaining wall for the runoff of the two higher properties on the left. And now with the redesign of the drainage plan, we no longer need that retaining wall, so we've removed that. There is a big elm tree over there, so we've got to be very mindful of, and a gum tree, and there's some large trees. So we have to be very mindful of what we put over there. It has to be in line with protecting the trees, so we just haven't gotten that far yet.
Oh, okay.
But in the front, kind of back by that dog shed, we'll be tying in the front of the fence with a gate that will go back into that side porch or the
Be a
side
pool
courtyard.
back in there. Is that
We,
correct?
we have, yes, we're kicking around what we're gonna do about that pool issue. Yeah, we haven't decided on that. We haven't finalized that yet.
So you'll come back.
We will,
with
yes,
one.
ma'am.
Okay.
We will be back with our total plan, hopefully soon.
I'm fine with going where the portico is. I'm fine with that, going over into the easement.
Thank you.
Go ahead and make the motion with your change, if you
Go
can.
ahead.
No motion is required. It's just a conceptual. Yeah, just for the buffer encroachment. But everything else just conceptual.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
So she'll come back with full details, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You know, I don't just want my two front teeth for Christmas. I want a building permit. That's what I want for Christmas. is a building permit.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve for the encroachment as submitted.
Mhm. I'll second.
All right, please answer for me. Beth,
Yes.
Rachel?
You can.
Oh, she's out.
It's out.
Tim,
Yes.
Nancy Jean,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
and mine is yes also. So we look forward to see you again.
Thank you. Me too. Bye now.
Our next item is 118 West Richardson Avenue.
Applicant is requesting approval to paint existing brick on property. While other brick buildings in the area are painted, these were painted prior to the implementation of the historic district guidelines. The building is not a standalone building and is connected to buildings with unpainted masonry. Also, as part of this application, there is signage that will be painted onto the building, so it will be reviewed as a mural essentially. BAR approval is required for the painted signage as well.
So we've submitted initially before, it was prior to, I guess it's been a few months now. So we kind of quickly hit on the painting or what we're referring to more as a stain for the building. And we kind of talked about, we really like the rendering. Obviously renderings are a computer generated image. So we try to do our best with that. There was some brick repairs, some infill. That was some of our concern on how do we make this building very cohesive and how to really make everything flow together. Now that we have repair work, it's very evident that there are new brick. Some type of stain is what we're referencing that allows the brick to breathe versus more of a paint. There's a couple ways we can manipulate that stain to where maybe it's more of a full stain versus trying to get it to where it's a little bit lighter. So heavier versus a lighter method of that stain. It's difficult to versus trying to get it to look exactly like the rendering. Our hope would be to get it to however, or an example provided. That's one thing that we were hoping to reference is there an example of a building or a structure that we could use as a template, something that's real so we can physically see it. We, this week, tried to provide a few samples inside the building.
Those have been provided to the board.
And so what we were able to do with that stain was try to change the mixture with it as far as the base of water or the how heavy that stain was. And some produced a little bit of a more full stain versus a partial stain. There's a couple of methods to where you stain and then some people often have to go back to you try to remove some of it, which is, again, you kind of play with this. It's very hard to duplicate exactly what that is every single time. So again, having a reference of what would be acceptable, something physical we could see would be preferable. But we've tried to do a couple samples, physical samples that are there presently now, and just trying to get some feedback. They really do want this building to be white. I think it would, there's other buildings in the area that are painted. We would like a stain. I think that it's provides a little bit different of that texture and look versus a paint versus a stain. But, and then also the signage, I think is nothing too crazy, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at. I was hoping to get some feedback as far as our approval to proceed with a stain or some type of stain or something that we can provide so we can move forward as we're trying to have this open prior to the end of the year. So we're moving pretty quick. So we do appreciate everyone. I know we've made a lot of racket and noise but hopefully that temporary fence is coming down very shortly within 30 days or so. But again, just trying to get to the next step. We want, we're big in trying to provide the correct look for the town. We're very intentional in what we do, how we do it, how we represent ourselves, how the site has represented. So we also want to make sure that we can provide something everyone is comfortable with.
Yes, one of my questions was, what portion of that building are we talking about?
It would be the whole building as a whole. There's
Entire project?
Yes, ma'am. There's two. I guess it'd be those two sides. So it'd be the side on Short Central and then also the side on West Richardson.
Okay, so the whole flat rooftop right there, the gray roof, that the sides of those buildings, that would be painted?
Yes, ma'am. And that now is a nice white TPO roof.
And how much of the existing wall has been repaired?
So there's sporadic miscellaneous repairs. So there's not like a delineated area that's like, this is the only, there's some all the way to that abuts next to the building on West Richardson to where we pulled out that door. That's where previously it had a lot of water rush into the building every time it rained. So we were able to repair that and also address that where the storefront actually bumps out. It used to be a recessed door. So that's actually, but there's some repairs there. There's some repairs at each window opening. There's an additional storefront opening that has some repairs. the corner of the building is repaired. The building was in some pretty serious structural issues, and so we were able to repair that and support the building. But again, we want to mask these repairs, the different mortar, that shows from a new mortar versus old mortar. There was some mortar that had to be readdressed, so we had to repoint part of the building as well. So it's very sporadic. There isn't really a definite area, so it's throughout.
Have you painted part of the wall that includes the existing wall and a repaired part of the wall so that you can look at how does the color look over that transition between the two?
That was our plan the other day prior to the rainstorm. Because that is a wired brick as well, which is versus a smooth brick, which the texture obviously affects how stain will take it in. And that's so I'm glad you actually asked that. So that's kind of where we were hoping to go towards more of a solid stain versus trying to more of making an artistic, hey, we know you like this, we hope that this will work exactly, versus if you go to a full stain, that's something that we know we can kind of promise or more so guarantee, versus trying to do something that may be more of a worn look. So our hope was, and our preference is to go with more of what I would consider a full stain, because we know we can keep that consistency up, and that with the new areas versus the old areas, we know that we'd be able to make everything very cohesive.
I'm only one person on this board, but I think if it were solid white, it would stand out like a sore thumb. I kind of hate this. I would hate to see that happen. I like the wash part of it. It almost looks like antique brick. And I hear what you're saying about it. It might work and it might not work. So I'm going to let other people.
And it'd be more of a cream. I don't know if that
Mhm.
helps to where versus we're not
Bright
going
white.
to Sherwin-Williams bright white ceiling, so it would be more of a cream versus some type of very bright white. It would be the color selection.
What year was the building built? Do you know?
Okay. So I think my concern here is that, it is in our guidelines that we don't normally approve brick buildings to be painted. And part of the Somerville fabric is red brick. I guess it probably goes back to the Salisbury brick plants and all the red brick buildings in town. So I have a concern about a block here that we have, everything is brick, the parking garage, the city hall, everything in that block is brick right now. And while they don't all match, they all coordinate together. And then all of a sudden, once this is done, you can really never undo it. There is a company called Nawkaw, Nawkaw, that I've used personally, and they can absolutely match your brick exactly and the mortar joints. And while it is expensive, it won't be any more expensive than painting the entire building. And so I think from a cost perspective for the owner, it would be similar.
It's good.
But that's my concern, is just the location in the historic district and the red brick history of Somerville.
And using the product that you're talking about would make all the brick match essentially the old part
Well,
and the new part.
you wouldn't stain the whole building. You just stained the infill or where they had to do
Okay.
repair. So
Even mortar joints that are
even mortar joints.
40 years old.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. 100%. That's what they specialize in. Historic structures that they have to come in, or either the other place is like where a pressure washer goes crazy on a brick building and leaves wand marks all over it. They can completely repair or replace those. So it's a great product, great company. They do excellent work, and it lasts. I did a building 30 years ago and you still can't see that where they repaired it. And so that would be one option. Of course, all the brick needs to be cleaned. It's dirty, it needs to be pressure washed and stuff. And So I don't know. That's where I'm concerned is I could certainly be persuaded otherwise, but that's just my concern.
You persuaded me.
I think that was what we had mentioned to you before, that Somerville is a town that likes and admires our brick, and that it was part of our guidelines to keep the brick. And we, without Tim's input, did not know of a product like this. So we were thinking a whitewashed kind of thing so that the brick really showed up through.
Yes, ma'am.
Could be something we could look at, but what you're talking about with a solid stain,
Well, we're open to a whitewashed as well. What we're asking was something to where we can match, because whitewashed, someone says, this is what I understand as whitewashed, this is their whitewashed. So we're asking if we could have something to represent that to where we could duplicate, because if I try to go with what you think's whitewashed and then someone else says, well, this is what I thought was whitewashed, and we don't have any standard.
I mean, the only way that that could work is if you did something up on the site and we literally looked at it on site. But I feel like the product that Tim is talking about could be that answer to give you the finish that you're looking for and that your owners would like, and that it still complies with our guidelines and our intent to keep Somerville looking brick.
And there are other buildings across from it. You got Azalea, you've got a lot of, I think there is actually a decent amount of colored buildings around the area. So just to keep that in mind. And my only concern with this product is we're trying to get open, trying to finish this project. What's the cost versus what's in the budget? And then also, trying to.
Can it be something that you would look at this? And I mean, I know you're quoting other examples, but each of those are like small little infill buildings. This is a lot of wall on a corner. It's a completely different situation than an odd little building that has its front painted.
And I also believe that all those references were done in the past, and that's part of the reason this got added to the
Yeah.
historic district, was so that we didn't lose all the red brick buildings in town.
Oh, for sure. I understand.
So
And Tim, is this product something they could just test out a little piece?
they can
of to
definitely
try
test it out. A guy can
if
come.
It would work for
um,
you?
And I will say, I tried to use a inferior product one time. It did not work. So the technology that these guys have absolutely works.
Okay, yeah. So is there any, as far as if we were to provide another alternative or a sample on the exterior of the building to where, because I only am concerned about what that product cost is related, and then the timeline, just because I don't know, I don't have the contacts or the schedule or when we're trying to open up in 90-ish days. So that's just one concern. Is there an option? Would an option B be available to where we could provide something physically on site for everyone to see?
I mean, the great news is that they're usually pretty available.
No, I understand.
And
I don't know who you're referring
You
to.
can also have them come after you open. I mean, because the repairs can be done after
Sure.
the
No, yeah,
fact.
no, and
So
usually, yeah, just the opening with a new building with mismatched brick isn't
Understand.
typically preferred.
I understand it's your desire that you want it to stick out and get it. I get it. I completely understand. And I'm sorry, I try to look at it always from both sides of the coin. And I think the whole reason that we try to save the brick in town is because of the history of brick in Somerville.
Understood.
So it's not to penalize you.
No,
We
no,
want
but
you
if
to be
we-
successful. I'm looking forward to
Oh,
join
no,
coming
for
there.
sure, for sure. No, and
So-
I'm supporting what we've been equipped with as far as personal
Sure.
versus the actual client and the end user, Biscuit Belly. So I guess I would just.
And
need that
your role, I'm sorry, your role is what? You're the contractor?
Yes, sir.
Okay, gotcha. I'm sorry, I just didn't know
Oh,
who you
yes,
were. I
sir.
didn't know if you're the architect, contractor.
No,
owner. I
sir.
didn't know who
We
you were.
kind of,
Sure.
we're putting into place what was kind of been given to us.
Remy, what is the protocol if he leaves and he investigates this product and we meet monthly? Is there any mechanism where he could have a quorum, look at something before our next meeting? Or is he stuck to, if it's part of a conversation, like what is our,
So
Protocol.
a special meeting could be scheduled to take a look at it. We would still have to meet posting requirements and whatnot, but it is something we could look at. We could see when we'd have a quorum available. We can discuss your schedule as well and see if that's something we could make happen, if that's what you'd like to do.
Would that work for you?
Yeah, we'll make whatever we can, whatever we need to. As far as the painted signage too, I guess that would be the other item.
I mean, I'll have to say, if we don't paint the building, I don't recommend painting the
Yeah.
signage. So if we painted the building, why not paint the signage
Right.
too? Because you'll just paint over it or stain over it in the future. But I would hate to see us paint and then 10 years from now, the restaurant changes and then you've got kind of a mess on your hands with the paint, where a traditional sign, you can replace it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I agree.
Yeah. Not to paint this signage on the building, and the verbiage on the signage bothers me. I just don't feel like it's Somerville. So I don't know if that's the logo or part of the,
I can't
is
speak.
that how they brand their buildings, or?
I'm not 100% on as far as what's typical signage for them. They do have other locations, but
Yeah, yeah.
What's the name of the restaurant?
Biscuit Belly, they're based out of Kentucky.
Okay.
So
And
they
it's
got,
the word booze on the side of it's not. or wholesome
and I'm sure they were going for the painted signage due to the hope or the intent of it being a painted building. So I can get
Yep.
because even if it wasn't painted, it probably wouldn't be as clear as a sign on something that's a background of white. So.
Yeah.
Would you like the opportunity to go check this other out before we
Sure.
give you any ruling on it?
Yeah, I can check that other product out if I can just.
Yep, you can Google it. It's NAWKAW.
Okay.
And if you need to call me, they can give you my number and I can give you the local contacts number.
Okay, cool.
So Remy, should we just table this for now, or?
Yeah, you can move to table it for now, and then we can be in contact with each other. And if we need to do a special meeting or just get you on the next agenda, we can figure that out.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Good luck.
Yeah. Our next one is 500 North Main Street.
We do need a motion to table the previous item.
Hmm?
We need a motion to table the previous item.
You want a motion?
Mm.
All right. A motion?
Motion to table the painting of the building at 118 West Richardson, and also the signage.
And I'll second.
And
I'll
please
second.
answer for me, Beth,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Nancy Jean,
Yes.
Nancy, Jane,
Yes.
and mine is yes.
For 500 North Main Street, applicant is requesting conceptual review. This is phase one of a multi-phase mixed-use development. This project has been before the town's technical review committee and has received initial comments from our town arborist. The applicant has been advised that an arborist care plan will be required for any trees to be saved. The applicant has made an effort to provide context for the proposed design, and that is available in the packet. Staff would encourage the board to provide specific feedback on design. Site requirements and zoning requirements will primarily be handled at a staff level, so strictly design. Otherwise, it appears to be compliant, but that is something we would take a closer look at further down the road.
So I'd like a clarification on our procedures. So I know we have certain requirements on a demolition versus something else. So refresh our memory for all the board members on how we handle demolitions.
So right now, this is just a conceptual review. Y'all will not be voting on anything. If the demolition were submitted by the applicant, proposed for approval, then, it would meet the same posting requirements are there. There are a few criteria that have to be addressed when the board actually votes on a demolition, but that does not apply to this application to the board tonight.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you and good evening, members of the board and chairman. I want to thank you for your time. I also want to thank staff. Remy, thank you for preparing an overview of the project and working with us in the months leading up to this. I also want to thank everyone here. We've been here, we've been listening to your comments, and they are critical to the success of this project, for us to be able to respond, react, and dialogue with the members of this community. I also want to thank my wife. She's not here. She's in Greenville with my children. They are still without power, and I'm sure she wants me to come home tonight, so I'm going to probably make a quick exit after this meeting. But
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Could you please introduce yourselves?
yes, ma'am,
That's
I will.
next.
So just to react to that quickly, my name is Robert Poppleton. I am representing the developer, the Furman Company. And I'm here this evening with Heather from Boudreaux. And we are together going to be providing some comments that go along with our application. Happy to speak and hear your questions and react, but also to recognize, I think to echo what staff has said, that this is the first of a process, and we have anticipated this being a process. I think it was Miss Tiffany who said earlier, this calling out the fact that this is an intentional, respectful, and thoughtful, or should be those three things. And that's our intention with this project. And I'll kind of organize. I've been trying to rewrite some of my outline here. Only a few minutes. I won't be long-winded. But when it comes to intentionality, again, that process, this is something that we understand has been happening for a couple of years, several years in the making. However, this is now a new moment where we are sharing for the first time an updated concept. And so we want in parallel or along the way of the various bar meetings that we will go through, we also intend to host additional community workshops and sessions where we can continue to have local input and dialogue and conversation around getting this right. So I don't wanted to make that intentionality is definitely part of what we want to get right here. Respectful, a little bit about the Furman Company, just for context, and myself. I have worked with the Furman Company relatively for a short time when considering Furman's history, about 1/10 of our history. We're a 135-year-old company and based in Greenville. And I've been there. I'm starting this week, my 13th year. I've had the pleasure of overseeing and working with working on a variety of projects, including a handful of historic preservation projects, working with the State Historic Preservation Office and National Park Service, as well as new construction and infill projects on sites like the subject. And, that background, some of the things that I've learned along the way is the importance of a sense of place. Oftentimes developers walk into a new setting and try to create a sense of place. And that's very hard to do. I don't think that that's the type of development that our company is best at. Rather, we latch on to and try to lean into the existing character of a place. And so coming to know Somerville in the last couple of years, and hearing and learning and listening to the recorded input, the newspaper articles and interviews, including in this room tonight, allowing ourselves to do what we can to be respectful of what is here. And I hope that starting tonight and continuing, you will see that in this project. You know, I appreciated the stories that were shared, and we've heard others prior to this evening. And we want those stories to be retold in various ways within the context of this project. We have already worked to preserve a square in front of the most significant architectural feature of the county services building, the Meservey Square, that will be right at the center, the heartbeat of the master plan, introducing new view corridors within the context of the master plan, as well as what we hope becomes a bookend park experience, what's being referred to now as Welcome Park, at the corner of Main Street and 78. And moving to, you know, we are, as I mentioned earlier, trying to be thoughtful in this. You know, one example of that, I think, Mr. Fagan, you brought up the azaleas and the pines. We are certainly, and working closely with an arborist and staff in feedback, looking to preserve as many of the trees that make sense to do so within this, and have designed the master plan, as you can see in some of these renderings, to reflect where the most significant clusters of existing trees are. We are seeking to keep those open spaces. That's part of the early feedback we heard from the community, actually, that was passed down to us when we started working on this. That open space is important, so that you'll see that reflected here, at least our attempts at that. Just to wrap up, I do want to acknowledge that we do intend and have looked carefully at the existing improvements, the existing county services building, and have studied it from several different ways, and how to achieve the vibrancy that within the future development of this site, while preserving a lot of the significance that's there. Candidly, it's a very hard building to repurpose for modern use in the context of a mixed-use setting. And we've looked at it from a market base perspective, as well as from a design and construction feasibility and structural feasibility. It was our initial desire to dismantle the building and completely. But we have along the way changed that. We've heard its significance, and we have selected what you see in the plan. What we've heard is the most significant portion, the two-story space behind the portico and the portico itself. You know, that's what we will walk you through in more detail. Heather will do a much better job than I will, so I'll sit down, but I'm happy to take questions, and I do look forward in the coming weeks. We will make sure that we can coordinate with staff to announce where there will be additional times for the community to gather with us in our design team to make sure that we are able to continue the conversation. So thank you, and I look forward to our dialogue.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm Heather Mitchell, architect with Boudreaux in Columbia, and very excited and honored and privileged to continue to be a part of this project. We were part of the master planning team and are fortunate to be on Furman's team to now have the opportunity to continue on with the design of the new office building and the site master plan. And I too want to add my thanks to the community. Your passion and energy and commitment and belief in Summerville and all that's important is what really fuels our design process. So honored to be able to walk you through, given the complexity of the project. I thought if Chair Dixon, if you'd like, I can kind of walk you through the images and the design intent. So I will go back to the beginning. The first couple slides are for information and background of things that are important to you all in terms of conceptual review and understanding the site. So we do have a full survey of all the existing conditions on the site in terms of topography, and particularly most important to all of us and to Summerville are the trees on the site. The information here then provides a legend to the trees. And they are all color coded and coordinated so that we all have the information in front of us as we design. The green trees are the most important, the grand trees on the site. And should they need to be removed, we have to replace trees on the site at the full width and diameter of those trees. The red trees are the trees that are low grade, are damaged or beyond repair or health, or in poor health, and or are invasive on the site, such as the Bradford pears, and can be removed without penalty. And then anything in white are the trees that are kind of in the middle there, and those are also protected trees, but should they be removed, they would need to be replaced at 50%. And as Robert mentioned, we are very, especially looking at Welcome Park and the stand of pine trees that welcome you into downtown Somerville, and that those trees, as many as possible, stay in that location. You'll see that intent in the renderings. This is the site that we all know and love, and its location. And again, obviously the goal for the community and with the new Unified Development Ordinance is to densify this site and bring vitality and mixed use and more residential to downtown Somerville so that it continues to fuel the businesses and the community and helps connect pedestrians to the entirety of the downtown with some of the other developments that I know that the town is planning in terms of enhancing sidewalks and connections down to Hutchinson Square. You all are very familiar with the site. These are photographs. The blue cones, the point of the cone is where you're standing, and then the wide swath is the direction you're looking. So just kind of a reminder of the character and existing conditions around the site, particularly the corner in image 1 is the stand of pine trees that we're intending to retain as many as possible there. Slide 2 or image 2 is of the Veterans Memorial that we plan to relocate on the site, but internal to Welcome Park. So it is in a very highly visible location at the main entry of the building, but also away from the busy intersection and shielded there, and provides a place of gathering and reverence and importance around that site. And it's also obviously the very important view to the portico of the historic hospital. These are the views from 4th Street, looking at the side of the building. Walking around now to Cedar and what is the entrance to council chambers today. Slide 8 is perhaps the most important slide in terms of the heart and the iconic portico of the historic hospital that's been there since 1937. And so again, as Robert mentioned, the goal in terms of balancing the vitality, the density, the mixed use, and the opportunities for the site in terms of downtown economic development, but balance that with retaining the preservation and the memory and the cultural significance of the hospital is to maintain that center section, the 2-story section, and the portico, and to preserve that for future integration into the master plan. And then these are all just views looking out from the site in the surrounding context. Again, as you all know well. Okay, so this now shows you the conceptual site plan. And again, our conceptual review and request before you this evening is related to phase 1, which is a new 3-story office building that will be built by Furman as the developer for use by the county. So the county will be the tenant, and it will be a county services building housing many of the services that are on the site now today, especially but even better serve the community. And that was something we heard very important, that the county presence on the site here in downtown Somerville has always been very important. And so making those services welcoming and inviting to the community and easy to navigate. So we're looking at new entryway or preserving the existing entryway from 4th and into the site. The 3-story office building will be along 78, and that's been important that the future residential envisioned for the site, which is part of the future phases, are on the more pedestrian oriented ends of the site along Cedar and 4th. And along Main, we have future parcels for retail preserved that will flank and activate Missouri Square. That's in the center there. which then also preserves the views and the vista to the portico of the hospital from Main Street, which we also know is very important to the community and really enhances those as well. And then the office building is anchored by the Welcome Park at the corner with the trees. You'll see in the renderings that that is envisioned as a very open area at the main building entrance, and then has some smaller areas. We envision a water feature along the inside of the signage wall that helps buffer some of the sound in the park corner as well. And so that it's a place for gathering, but also a place of quiet and outdoor dining respite for the county office employees as well as for the community. The main entrance is to the north, you'll see. And then you can see here on the black and white site plan, the location of the hospital. And we've kind of talked about the goal to preserve that, and that's all in writing here in your packet. And then that will be where the wings come off. That will be enclosed so the building stays watertight and preserved for future adaptive reuse or for some sort of integration into the future phases of the site. These next series of images are kind of framing the design as we move ahead and things we've been looking at in Somerville in terms of sources of inspiration and case study. As we put a new commercial building in the community, we know that must absolutely be responsive to the context, feel like it belongs, and feel like it's taking its cues from the historic fabric of downtown Somerville that's so important. And that's the materials, the red brick, the fine detailing in the brick, the level of character quality, the size and proportion of the windows, et cetera. Certainly looking at the historic hospital in its heyday in the 1950s, in that hierarchy, where is the entry, the columns, that signature, that civic and sense of dignity and a distinguished building. Looking at the Public Works building and just really more for how the building sits in the landscape and feels a part of the trees and the natural environment that's made Somerville such a destination for all these years. Certainly pedestrian connectivity and how we design the places and the plazas and the walkways around the site. When you look at the buildings that flank Hutchison Square, you can see some of the cornice details that we are looking at for inspiration that I'll show you in the new construction. Again, it's a sense of defined entries. These are newer construction buildings around the country that represent some of the level of quality and details that we're thinking about for the new building. These are just relations of small things, nothing that's an exact replica, but the depth of the windows, the size proportion, the detailing in the brick, the sense of a base, a middle and top, that's important in historic buildings. Also, particularly in the bottom corner, the idea that the building has two primary stories and the third story sets back so that the scale of the building is more in keeping to the context of the community. Again, that it reads that strong two-story massing, and then by stepping back, it kind of defers to the scale of community. Again, similar, again, in the historic guidelines and in the design guidelines for the Unified Development Ordinance, the notion that the glass on the ground level is broken up by significant portions of brick as well, so that you don't have a glass building that reads more contemporary, that is, again, that sense of historic proportions and openings. Again, these are just case study inspiration. There's nothing specific or exact that we're referencing here, just kind of the feel of some of these buildings, and again, the color palette of the red brick. The sense of arcades or walkways, that you have pedestrian areas and overhangs. Again, that is layering effect is very important in urban buildings. And you'll see that in our building as well, creating this welcoming notion of a front porch along Welcome Park. This narrative was part of the packet as well in terms of writing and defining the spirit of the project, which really echoes some of the things that Robert mentioned, as well as the things that I've hit on, the notion that Welcome Park is a bookend for Hutchison Square, and that this building feels much, as a home for Dorchester County. It really leverages the historic character and sense of materials and massing and scale, et cetera. All very important to us. as your design partner on this project. So then from here, the next series will walk you around some very preliminary and early conceptual images. But too far away from Remy, I think. There we go. So this is a aerial view. If you're up in the air looking down on Welcome Park, and again, you can see the Veterans Memorial near the main entry to the building at that corner. There's also a notion for a Springs Family Memorial, an historic marker that speaks to that connection to the community as well. And again, the relocation of the Veterans Memorial in that circular brick area. Robert, you want to jump in? Please do.
One of the comments was about, is that an appropriate placement of a park? It is a challenge. It's challenging in many urban environments to establish successful green spaces. It's something that we are working towards in activating this corner that can actually both be a beautiful gateway feature and bookend, but also inviting. And so one of the things that you'll see further developed as this goes on, that's expressed here is a little bit of a curved sound wall that will be, established at the right height to make sure people feel comfortable at that corner. That it will also integrate into the larger connectivity network, bringing it to other places on Main Street. So we can talk about that more further.
As currently drawn, what's the depth of the park from Main Street? From Main Street to the face of the building is how many feet?
It's about 90 feet.
90 feet.
And it's pretty similar to the width of Hutchison Square as well. Kind of if you were to lay them, I mean, if you look at the aerial view and how deep Hutchison Square is, it's very similar.
Okay, thank you.
This is the view now from the corner of 78 and North Main, 5th and North Main, looking at the Welcome Park. Again, all the design of the walls and the color of the brick and the signage is all in front of us. These are just very conceptual to show the idea of creating an entry and a gateway, but also a wall, as Robert just described, that shields and provides a sound barrier and a sense of safety and enclosure to the park at that corner as well. And you can see then into the distance, you can see the portico of the preserved hospital. You can see the pine trees that are so important to remain there and add the character and warmth and shade to Welcome Park. And then the two-story character of the office building that then has the third story that steps back. You can see a little bit of dental molding or the cornice that I alluded to, which is hearkening back to Hutchison Square, and that's at the top of the roof line of the building. Studying the options for materials of that upper level in terms of what type of panelization would be important, but just the notion that it's a darker material, so therefore it visually recedes is the big idea there. You can see the arcade. There's a covered walkway around the corner. Again, the sense of scale and rhythm of the openings and kind of the traditional vertical proportions of the windows that we're looking at there. This view now is from North Main Street, looking to the west, and it is again that covered portico. There is a third story outdoor terrace. The council chambers and community gathering space will be on that upper level, very similar to this three-story building here, and council chambers being on the upper level. And it will have an outdoor gathering space that then looks to the south and views to Hutchison Square, and you see that terrace there at the upper corner. And again, you can see the elements of where the Springs Memorial historic marker might be and the Veterans Memorial and flag proposed location. Again, this is all preliminary and an open welcome comments and further design of the park and the plazas. As we continue to move around the site. Further. Yeah. This view is more of an aerial view, as if you're up over the existing portico of the hospital and Meservey Square, looking toward the main entry of the building from the parking side. You've got the entrance to the building where it says Dorchester County. Again, this is the main kind of civic entry into the service area and lobby, public lobby of the building. And again, the three-part composition paying homage to some of the materials in the portico, but wanting to be secondary to the existing hospital portico and not repeat the pediment. And so that is still the most important kind of piece on the site. The brick breaks away and you have the main stair, the vertical circulation express there in the building that kind of creates a dynamic element that's lit at night as well. A closer view of that entry now from more ground level in front of the building. And again, you can see that sense of entry and how you've got the portico and covered walkways around the corner of the building that leads you as a pedestrian from Main Street and into the building. We just have a few more views to walk you around here. This is a view more from Cedar, as if you were walking into the site from that direction. And again, you can see the rhythm, the red brick, the cornice details, all to be kind of further developed as we move ahead. We also have a secondary, envisioned to be more of an employee entry on the west side of the building from the parking area. And it would also be a feature as you're moving along parallel to the building on 78. So that each side of the building has equal significance, because there really is no back to this building. It's very important that all sides of it are equally well designed and detailed, and that all service elements are screened in compliance with your guidelines as well, whether that's heating, ventilating, air conditioning units on the roof or sites, elements on the site. And this final view to share with you this evening is the view from 78. This is more your vehicular view as you pass by the building, and there are improvements envisioned along 78, and the location of the building does provide for those future improvements and expanded right away and pedestrian improvements along 78 as well. So, with that, I'd be happy to go back and answer questions. Very excited and to hear your comments.
On the Boudreaux website.
Yes.
When you talk about the different areas that you work in, one of the things is the municipal buildings,
Yes.
which this of course is. And you mentioned having community outreach, which you mentioned you're going to probably have, but you also say that one of your purposes is to capture the character of the community. I'd like to know, other than brick, what character of the community does this building capture?
Our hope was that the detailing of the brick, again, the scale of the building with hitting the cornice at the second story and then recessing the higher level helped to bring the scale down a little bit to the community. Certainly the level of detailing and the indoor-outdoor connections.
It just feels massive, and it does not in any way say Somerville to me.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Okay, I appreciate that. What, any suggestions from your perspective of how to make it, or like when you think about, I mean, obviously this is going to be a bigger building, and that is part of a goal that we understand and heard from the community for this site to have more density on it to,
I think it's too massive to begin with.
so it's really the scale that's more of a concern to
The
you?
scale is out of character with the historic district, in my opinion. And it feels sterile. It looks like, I think you mentioned Mount Pleasant, Coleman Boulevard.
Absolutely, Mount Pleasant.
And that's, it's wonderful for other places. But for me, I could not live with that. I could not approve it. So end of my questions.
Thank you for that feedback.
I have a few comments that I had wanted to make. And it's a bit of an overview on all of the pieces that I noted throughout your presentation and in the documents provided. So my first thought was that you have a paragraph here, a new 3-story office building, the new home for Dorchester County and Somerville. leverages massing, fenestration, materiality, and detailing that reflect the quintessential character of Somerville. And I love every single word you said, but I have to say truthfully, I don't see it executed. And what you're showing is underwhelming and doesn't articulate for me and doesn't represent the goals that you have. So I want to talk about that in a bit more detail. So the first is the existing hospital building. We all know that kind of building. The center portico, the two side wings, the symmetry, the ends of that. They're a vocabulary that we all know, we understand. They're set up on that site so that we can all read it. We know where to drive in. It's reinforced by that Veterans Memorial piece. It's a really strong like site layout, but it's also strong architecturally. So if you take off the side wings and you take off the two little end pieces and you just leave us the little centerpiece, and then we've got a drive going straight up with two mishmash buildings on each side, which are not symmetrical in your diagram. So that, and they could be honestly looking like this. And then behind that is the remnant of what was a powerful looking building that represented what it was, like the importance of it in this community. So I'm thinking that you've completely dismembered its role architecturally, its role on the site, by then taking off the wings, putting two buildings in front of it. So it's hidden behind perhaps 3-story buildings that are commercial buildings that are going to need to be advertising to every single person driving by, hey, stop here. I have something you want to buy or a place you want to go. So it undermines that importance of that building, in my opinion. And it just, so it starts with that site piece. The next thing that I had wanted to talk about was that traditionally buildings face the street. The images that you showed us of traditional Somerville, the buildings along Hutchins Square, they all face the street. We know exactly where the entrance is. We know how to get there. And again, we can read them. And what you've done is you've created where we all now go to the inside of a site. We're going to be driving around looking and then looking for signage to figure out where we're going. So there's nothing on the outside that will be the entrance. It's all going to be from the inside. So then people are going to want to drive up to that door because that's where they're going in. So there's no internal kind of pedestrian, civic feeling, sidewalks, like a space created. It'll just be another shopping mall, another suburban shopping mall. There will be nothing about it that's uniquely Somerville. And I think that that's a missed opportunity to just employ that model of a suburban complex. And there have been places that have tried to, you know, create more of a, like a pedestrian experience, more of an outside experience. And I don't see how you can execute that with the layout that you're proposing and the kinds of buildings that you're proposing. So I think that I'm worried about having this like really banal idea of like taking an important lot and just turning it into another like mall type building where it's like acres of parking and all the, you know, you have buildings that are signposts so you know where you're going. As far as your corner park goes, I really love that you have tried to make a corner park. I like the idea that you're trying to create a space. And in Somerville, we have really great examples of how to make really good outside spaces. Hutchins Square is amazing. Azalea Park is amazing. Even our new park by the Ashley River, it's amazing. Like each of them are different, but each of them are really focused on what is the point of what they're trying to do and how do they do that. And they're all amazing. And I feel like your park has the intention of something, but honestly, that little sign, I've seen every single, like, you know, residential community, they have their gates at like their little signs out front and it says like Riverview or, you know, something Manor or somebody Plantation. Like it's exactly that kind of sign. Like there's nothing special about it being welcome to Somerville. You're bookending Somerville. It's just this really like pretty ordinary, underwhelming sign. And the design of the park itself feels underwhelming. Like I don't see where, I don't really understand who is going to go there beyond you described maybe people having lunch. Like really? That's our main goal, is that the employees have somewhere to go and have lunch? Like we need to create a space that has some meaning. And all I see is like endless sidewalks with little tiny beds. And you've plopped the Vietnam Memorial there, and then you can't even really look at it. It doesn't have the prominence that it currently has. It just honestly feels like it's not yet a space. It's still an idea, and I think you need to really think through, how do you make a great space that really is that corner into Somerville? If it's supposed to bookend the end to Hutchins Square, then you need to really think about how is it going to do that, because currently I don't think you've achieved your goals. Like, as I said, you've got the words right, you've got the ideas right, but you're not yet translating that into effective site plan design or effective architecture. And then I had a couple of other just comments. One, colonnades. Again, I don't see these being pedestrian buildings the way that you've designed your site plan. So the colonnades feel abstract, like just sort of, oh, there's a nice architectural idea, like let's use it. So I think there needs to be a stronger, like what you're actually picking to be your elements needs to be better thought through. And the idea about, you know, the fenestration, the cornices, the massing of those, they're the right ideas, but I don't think you've executed. And when I'm looking at this conceptual design, I'm wondering a bunch of things, like if this little white box stuck out on front of another brick box is supposed to be inspired by the colonnade of the hospital building, I feel like it's so underwhelming. It hasn't really got that piece that was from that existing building, where it was crystal clear, like there is the entrance and we all got it. And then it's on the side. It's not even like using any of the pieces of that site, which had symmetry, balance, massing and proportion to reinforce these. Like you've stuck it on the side, and you've stuck it on the opposite side of where people arriving are going to see it. And then you can hardly see the existing colonnade of the hospital from that corner, because this building sticks out so far. So I'm back to going, I love the ideas that you have and the words that you're saying. I just don't see them executed in a way that either the site works and how it's laid out, how people are going to move around the site, how it sits within the city, and how it literally represents Somerville.
We appreciate your thoughtfulness and comments and the time you've clearly taken to study and think about the design, and that means a lot to us. And we also appreciate the challenge. And as Robert said, this is very, very early days. You know, the rudimentary nature of Welcome Park, we concur it's rudimentary now. It's a concept, it's an idea, and it does need a lot more rigor and development in terms of how to create that magical place. And so I very much appreciate your comments. We are, you know, obviously balancing a lot of goals with the project in terms of the amount of space needed by the county, the goals for the amount of density and different factors on the site, and how we plan this building to not only work day one, but also to work in a future master plan in terms of where and how you enter and how the spaces are created in and around the building. So I appreciate the comments that you've made. Thank you. Thank you.
I only want to make one last comment, and that was that this site was, I think it was in the 1990s, was added to the Historic District Registry.
Mhm.
So clearly our town thinks that that building and that site is important. And I know that my respect of my position and what the historic guidelines say mean that if you intend to demolish anything, there needs to be a really rigorous examination of what is there, what are what is the value of that building, what is the status of that building, what can be done with it. And I don't think it's a given that you can just take the center core and just say that represents the building. Like, our charge is really to preserve our historic district, and that building has been identified to us as being important.
I'll just add my comments to say I completely agree with my colleagues. I think we've missed the mark completely here. And it's a really tough plan. You guys have an almost impossible task. And you know, as a developer, I understand your position, your need, and as an architect, trying to put all his needs and our needs, it doesn't all fit into this box. And I feel like, you know, when y'all came for the master plan, we tried to tell you this stuff. And we feel like the plan that came back to us just ignored everything we said. And so I don't know where to tell you to go from here, other than the fact that, you know, the town put this in the historic district. You know, we have a commercial design review board, which has a different standard than our standard. And our standard is preservation and the historic district. And so because of that designation, that's kind of our charge here. And it's not just to create infill development.
I don't think that clapping is necessary after each one of our speaks. Thank you, though.
We have, just for the record, and I know we're not there yet, so I don't want to sound defensive, but what we did hear in March from you all was about the porosity of the site and it feeling like it was walled off. And since then, the parking deck has been eliminated and the density has come down, and there is more connectivity and views through the site. So I just want you to know that we did hear you, and we did try.
I know you
No, we're
did.
not there yet, but there
And-
has been modifications made based on the
and I
feedback. So
see
we hope
that.
to make more. So
But I just don't think it's there yet. And as far as, you know, like keeping the little core of the hospital, I just don't think that flies. I mean, the new wings do, you know, maybe the side wings, you know, they need the elevation, at least for me, the elevation as it faces Main Street needs to be preserved, the entire width of that elevation. And, you know, what happens on the backside, you know, that's probably more negotiable than what's happening on the front side of that property.
I don't know if it's possible, and I'm speaking hypothetically and strictly speaking only for myself, because we value that building, because that's our charge, I think that there could be some thought about if you're imagining that somehow this black building makes something disappear and is, like, I'm looking specifically at this, like you've got the piece in front and then you're trying to like focus the attention on that and not on some additional things that are behind. I'm wondering, is it possible to think about that building in that terms as well? Is that you're looking at a front and a piece that has some depth, and I don't know what that depth is, but then there is something added to it. And I know that there are many successful buildings where there's that literal incorporation into a historic piece, the new work, to like really make a powerful and beautiful building. And it could be a way to think about how to get the density you need, how to get the architecture that we're looking for, how to have it meet Somerville's goals.
I'll just add one other word that someone gave me this week was that, just Somerville's looking for excellence. And that's why this site is looking for excellence. And so in every detail that we're looking at, it's held to a higher standard. And that's really tough for a developer. I get it, I understand, but because of the location, the entrance, it's being held to a higher standard than, if this was the Piggly Wiggly site being redeveloped. And that would go to a different board and have a different standard associated with it. So, thanks.
Thank you.
One thing that I had read, or when we first opened, that I wanted to remind you, and this was quoted directly from our ordinance, that the board, we're supposed to look at projects purely on their aesthetics, design, architecture, height, mass, and scale, and in harmony with the historic district in the sound of Somerville. And especially that last part, I'm not quite sure you've gotten to that point yet.
Harmony and excellence. We hear I have all capitals in my notes. Thank you.
I also agree with my colleagues on this, and you can see the passion in the room. And so that pretty much speaks volumes.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And I think how I can't really complete my thought, but how the property flows and relates to each other. I can't see that yet. How the back property relates to the front property, the ingress, the egress. I know that's not what we're looking at, but that does affect all of us and is very important.
Even to like where the parking lots are. I mean, they're just like, you filled every available space with parking lot, and it just seems like they're not connected, cohesive, or I'm not even sure I'm not necessarily opposed to a parking garage on the backside. And the right done correctly and screened correctly and all that stuff, if that gets rid of all these random parking lots and there can be more connection in the rest of the site.
People does the county building employ? Do you know?
I do know, we do know, I have that, and I can get that information back to you. I don't have it in my notes with me tonight, so I can
I'm
let
just
you.
wondering if they fill up all 100 spaces.
They do. I mean, there is certainly some plans for growth, looking into 10 years. So, but yes, that is custom designed for their needs, in terms of.
Have you taken a look, or have they given you a copy of the comprehensive plan, the last one that was done for
Yes.
Somerville?
Yes.
One of the things that we discovered when the developers were creating Azalea Square is that they had not paid attention to some community surveys that we had done, 2 of them. And when they paid attention to that, they discovered that the community wanted, for instance, a theater. They were going to destroy, tear down the Lowe's where it is now and move it over to the other side. And when they looked at the comprehensive plan, they looked at the community input, and it essentially, they had groups of people come in. They put sticky notes on the wall with the ideas that people said, this is what's important to me. Because they listened to the community and really showed the community that they are paying attention to what they said, they got a lot more support, input, made people happy, made y'all, the developer happy. It's tough to try to figure out how to make the design work and financially for the developer. That is something that, thank God, we don't have to do. But the more you bring in the community and listen to them and show them that you're paying attention, the better buy-in you'll have and the easier time you will have accomplishing what you want to accomplish and what your words have said you want to accomplish. We want that too. So that's the only 2 cents I can put in.
Thank you. Wrap us up, Robert.
Any other comments? We're on here at all. I know it's not the first time. We're gonna hear it.
You're gracious.
Yes, thank you. We have our work cut out for us here. This is a lot of the comments from the board especially have pointed to the tension between different elements in the site that we have. We're working with existing zoning that calls and allows for density. We have been asked to reduce the site density, we believe, but maybe there's room for a parking garage behind the historic structure. That was the most interesting comment. I would love to explore that further. Parking, as so many of you in this room know, is the project killer. It is so hard to solve for. You need it. It's a necessary convenience. It's also a necessary evil when it comes to financing a project. Your lenders will not give you the financing if you don't have parking according to certain standards. So we want to solve it. You will hear from staff. We will be begging you for a workshop, a work session that we can have in the very near future so that we can filter some of your comments with our design team and reach some of the outcomes that this community desires. And that makes sense. I have full confidence we'll hit the architectural piece. We're going to get there. With your feedback, with our expertise, we're going to get there. The site challenge is probably the biggest one. Certain elements make it, unfeasible, which I know is part of the criteria when reviewing demolition proposals, according to our review. There are certain criteria that need to be met. We want to satisfy that. We believe that we can. Of course, we need to do that in coordination with you. So instead of reacting to specific comments, which we have reactions that we can continue to build upon. regarding the park, regarding how the retail and future phases, we need some flexibility for the future. And that's why that was more conceptual, but we can be better about how we frame that today. Instead of getting into those details, I would say, if you guys will accept us, let's have a workshop and let's have a working session where we can be civil and we can be productive. Because we want to get it right.
Great.
Okay?
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
You know,
Thank you.
one of the things that's kind of surprises me is the fact that you heard what we did with the other two projects, what we discussed and how we felt about the painting of the building and making it different and everything. I'm surprised that the county did not suggest to y'all that y'all sit in the back at several of our BAR meetings prior to this, so you could get the idea of what we're looking for and what we're trying to keep from getting. And we don't really want a modern blown up downtown area. I mean, we're trying to keep it traditional. The town dates back in the 1850s. And, you know, the type of construction is still used that was there. But the modernistic stuff, and I worked for an architectural firm for a good many years, so I know about it, but look more on the traditional side on the buildings of having something that blends into the rest of the downtown. And I think that would give everybody a better feeling of the project. That's my own personal, and what really gets me is that everybody in talking about it, when they talk paper and everything, is that, well, the Board of Architectural Review will decide what you want, get to do. We're the only non-paid people in the whole organization. But we do believe in Somerville, and we believe in what we have now. And we don't want people coming in from the interstate to see a real modernistic building stuck out there in the front of, before everything else. I mean, the town has just recently, the park, as you go across the tracks, they've just recently replaced the arch there that used to be down this end. I mean, trying to stay traditional. And that's really the only thing I can give you. I've been on the board since it began, and I've listened to all of my fellow members. And that's the standard thing, trying to keep Somerville looking like Somerville because we love it. And that's all I can say. But thank you for coming, and we look forward to seeing you many more times, I'm sure. So.
Yes, thank you for your comments.
Second. Get up and leave.